planet Earth is home to many beautiful, yet still mysterious phenomena, like the incredible aurora that we see behind me. But how exactly is this created, and does it have any impact on us? Deep within Earth's core, there is a magnetic field that is generated, and this extends far into outer space, and it acts as a magnetic shield for our planet, protecting us from harmful space weather like strong solar wind or even more powerful solar storms. Either of which, when they impact Earth, can trigger things like the northern lights or the southern lights, the aurora. But is that the only thing that's created during space weather impacts? The answer is no. We also have things like geomagnetic pulsations. These are extremely low frequency vibrations across Earth's entire magnetic field. They ripple down to the surface, and they have pretty significant biophysical effects. And so to answer the question of why you should never sleep facing north, today we are going to learn about geomagnetic pulsations and the health effects that they can have, and we'll look at some recent data because specifically, as I'm filming this, we had a big G4 geomagnetic storm, and we've had increasing geomagnetic pulsations ever since that moment in time. So I'm your host, Stefan Burns. Let's jump right into it. Geomagnetic pulsations are extremely low frequency vibrations that exist across Earth, and they're triggered primarily during solar storm impacts like we see here. Here we have Earth's magnetic field, we have the Earth itself, and you'll notice that all of a sudden Earth's magnetic field starts to vibrate under the influence of increased plasma density and velocity from the solar wind. Now, this magnetic field of the Earth is generated within the core, extends out through the mantle, past the lithosphere into space, and effectively this is a force field. The magnetic field is one of the fundamental forces of nature, and it guides the movement of charged particles like a proton or an electron or other ions like an alpha particle. And so they will flow down the field lines, and primarily they'll go down the polar cusp, and that's what creates the aurora. We have all these charged particles flowing down the magnetic field into the atmosphere in the northern and southern hemisphere, creating these colorful bands of lights. But the impact of that plasma from the solar wind or from a coronal mass ejection causes vibrations to Earth's magnetic field, and these can persist for a long time after an initial solar storm impact. For example, we've had this G4 geomagnetic storm on January 1st, and that effectively finished by the 2nd of January. There was some geomagnetic storming that occurred in the days afterwards, but just of a G1 to an unsettled level. But we've been having these geomagnetic pulsations continue to occur since then, and they've actually been getting stronger. And geomagnetic pulsations are very interesting because there is research that links them very strongly to our brain waves, to our heart rhythms, our overall autonomic nervous system, and also to our overall resting state and our consciousness. Before learning more about the physiological effects of geomagnetic pulsations and how you can best utilize these energies and things to avoid, let's first learn what geomagnetic pulsations are in the first place. So we have some spectrogram data here. This is January 4th, January 5th, January 6th, because we've been seeing significant geomagnetic pulsation during this time frame. And here we have an example right there blown up really big for you to see. We have our background magnetic field, and we have different energy resonances that we see here. We see the first mode of the Schumann resonance there at about 7.8 hertz on average. Then we have mode 2 at 14 hertz, mode 3 at 20, mode 4 at 25, continues on. We also see some noise from the power grid in the United Kingdom here. All this data is from Eskdalemer in the United Kingdom. And here we see this big increase in power in the background magnetic field at frequencies below the first mode of the Schumann resonance. So this is about 5 hertz right there. And we see our time axis on these data sets here. I blew this up, but let's actually now zoom in on that over here so we can see what I'm talking about very clearly. We have from about 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Universal Time in the United Kingdom, this big increase in power in the lowest frequency part of the magnetic field. This is about 5 hertz. This is a PC1 pulsation. And these do not occur every single day. They occur more often during and after geomagnetic storms. And because geomagnetic storms are more common during solar maximum, we have these sort of energetic effects occur more often during the maximum phase of a solar cycle, when the magnetic field of the sun is mid-flip. It's more chaotic. We get more solar storms, stronger solar wind, etc. That follows a 12-year cycle. We are in solar cycle 25 maximum right now as I'm filming this video. So we see this big power increase in these frequencies around 3 to 5 hertz. And what's interesting about this is that these geomagnetic pulsations connect very strongly to our heart rhythms. There's been a bunch of research done showing the connection between these energy pulsations of Earth's magnetic field and our autonomic nervous system, heart rate variability, and even things like cardiac infarctions and AFib and more. But they also overlap with delta brainwave rhythms. Delta brainwave rhythms go from 0 to 4 hertz, and theta goes from 4 to 8. And so overlaps with not only our heart, which creates our biofield and is the main orchestrator of our autonomic nervous system, but also our lowest frequency brain waves, which we dip into when we go into sleep. And so there is scientific research that's been done on geomagnetic pulsations showing that your orientation in the magnetic field of the Earth will determine whether you experience negative symptoms or beneficial effects from these energies manifesting. Zooming back out, we can look at our other days of data really quick so you can see some other examples. Here we have the 4th of January. We see that the pulsations here were quite weak, but they did pop up in the early morning universal time. And then on the 5th here, this is the north-south channel, we see that as well, though earlier in the day. If we go over to our east-west component, we will also see these pulsations, though they take on a different characteristic because there are changes depending on whether you're looking at the north-south vector direction or the east-west vector direction. So we see some pulsations there as well. Here we see these pulsations for the 5th of January, 2025. And then also these pulsations here for the 6th. And this goes all the way from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. universal time out of the United Kingdom. But we did not see these geomagnetic pulsations only in the UK. We also observed them recently in Italy. And here we have some more data from VLF.it showing some geomagnetic pulsations that have occurred just recently. This top strip there is actually for today. So you can see that we've had another day of strong geomagnetic pulsations right here. As I'm recording this video, we also had that on the 6th. Now this is the perfect location to observe geomagnetic pulsations because these magnetometer coils that they've installed to measure the magnetic field are in a mine. This is at the SOS Inatos mine in Italy, and so the overall field is shielded from a lot of noise as a result of it being underground. But these geomagnetic pulsations, because they're of such a low frequency, they actually pierce through rock and the earth very easily. And so we are able to observe them even deep within a mine. We see that right here. Let me zoom in for you. And so we can see the increase in the amplitude of the magnetic field during this time frame. Again, you can see that's early in the morning universal time. We see here, this is 8 a.m. universal, so about the same time frame as the data that we saw out of the United Kingdom, and about the same frequency range too. Here we have our frequency going from 0 all the way up to 10 hertz. We see the first mode of the Schumann resonance here, also there. This is the 5th of January. Here's the 6th, here's the 7th. But we see these geomagnetic pulsations hovering there in that 5 to 1 hertz zone. And that is very, very important because that is the frequency that connects most strongly to our heart rhythms. And to round out our education on geomagnetic pulsations a little bit more before we go into the physiological effects, here we have the natural lower frequency electromagnetic field, and we see a power spectral density plot. And so this allows us to understand in general the natural energies of that part of the light spectrum, because that's effectively what we're measuring. And so we see our extremely low frequency part there. This contains the Schumann resonances, these natural peaks of higher energy created by lightning strikes and other natural phenomena. And these overlap with our brain waves. There's been a bunch of research into the Schumann resonances as it relates to brain waves and overall health and wellness and consciousness. It's very, very interesting to talk about that on the channel. Here we have our different geomagnetic pulsations. You'll notice that the field strength goes up on all of them because Schumann resonances are only about 1 to 10 picotesla in strength, but geomagnetic pulsations can start to go up to 50 nanotesla, even 500 nanotesla in strength, depending on their frequency. And the lower frequency are, the bigger those variations in strength are. So we have PC1 pulsations there. They are less than a nanotesla in strength, but once you get to PC5, all of a sudden you're now at about 50 nanotesla in strength. And we see that the frequency of an electromagnetic field determines how deep it can penetrate into the Earth. Here we have a graphic showing the skin depth for different rock types. And so we see the frequency here at the bottom. This is gigahertz frequency, megahertz, kilohertz, and then even down to 1 hertz. And below here, here's 0.1 hertz. We see that the skin depth is very, very high. And so that means that it can pierce very deep into the Earth, and that can directly interact with the core. So when we have these space weather impacts, it's these vibrations in Earth's magnetic field that are generated that can even go down into the core and then radiate back out. There's just in general a big reverberation across our entire planet. And therefore it stands to reason that we have some sort of physiological effect to that because we evolved within this environment for millions and millions and billions of years if you go all the way back to multi and unicellular life. And so they have strong effects on us, and this has been measured scientifically. Let's learn about it. There's been a bunch of research done over the years exploring the connection between geophysics and biophysics, or in other words, the connection between the natural energies of the Earth and the changes that unfold across time, and then also our own health and wellness. I'll link some of those papers in the video description. We'll explore one in particular today that came out in 1985, which is absolutely fascinating. We see some of that data here. Effectively, what these researchers did is they looked at the effect of magnetic pulsations on both normal subjects and also yogis, and they examined the effect of those pulsations depending on the direction that they are oriented in. And so we have the EEG of a normal subject here, oriented in the north-south direction. Their head is to the north, and the magnetic field in India is about 40,000 nanotesla. So the natural magnetic field was then layered with an artificial 50 nanotesla 0.1 hertz magnetic pulsation. There was no geomagnetic storms occurring at that moment in time. Effectively, they created an artificial geomagnetic storm. And we see here that before exposure, they had a certain amplitude in their brainwave strength. We have beta rhythms, alpha, theta, delta, also different electrode placements on the scalp here. And beta and alpha rhythms are the two most dominant brainwave rhythms. Alpha goes from 8 to 12 hertz, beta goes from 12 to 30. Once that pulsation was turned on and they were laying down with their head facing north, all of a sudden brainwave amplitude decreased. So when in a prone position oriented north-south, head to the north, the 0.1 hertz 50 nanotesla magnetic pulsations cause an inhibition of brain activity, and the subjects reported feeling uneasy. There was a sense of confusion, restlessness, and even headache that persisted for quite a while after that dose of magnetic pulsations. It was only 10 minutes long that they gave them this exposure. Blood flow decreased significantly and blood cortisol levels increased significantly. Blood cortisol being linked to your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response, and overall level of stress. Also interesting is that they looked at yogis, not just normal people. India has a lot of yogis, of course. These people practice yoga and meditation, and yogis were better able to maintain homeostasis and had less deleterious effects from these magnetic pulsations when lying in this north-south direction with the head pointed north. If we go over to the other cardinal direction, east-west, normal subjects saw the opposite response, also yogis as well. So here we have the EEG of a normal subject in the east direction with their head to the east. Again, the normal magnetic field in India, about 40,000 nanotesla, layered with this artificial 50 nanotesla 0.1 hertz PC5 magnetic pulsation. We see before exposure, then they clicked that on, and all of a sudden brainwave amplitude went up. So there was an enhancement in overall brainwave strength across all the different bands. We have beta, alpha, theta, delta, they all went up. And when in this prone position, oriented east-west with the head to east, these artificial magnetic pulsations cause an accentuation of brain activity in normal subjects. There was an increase in blood flow. A state of calm, blissful alertness was reported, and practiced yogis had even more pronounced beneficial effects. And so what this is showing us is that your orientation in the geomagnetic field influences how these sort of geomagnetic pulsations affect you physiologically. If you are laying down with your head to the north and there is a geomagnetic storm, then you may experience some of these negative symptoms. And this is kind of the part that we don't fully understand. We may think it has to do with the magnetic force vector applying on the sensitive tissues on the brain. But if you're in the east-west direction, specifically with your head pointed east, then you see these beneficial effects. And it's almost like you have a little bit of an enhancement in your overall consciousness because you're in a more calm, blissful state of alertness and awareness. Whereas here, you're confused, you're groggy, and you don't really know what's happening. You're just uneasy, and you can even have a headache, right? There's actual inflammation occurring in the brain. They did not report any of these effects, really this or that. It was just kind of neutral for the subjects when they were laying with their head pointed south and also pointed east. And so during a geomagnetic storm, and also in general, it is beneficial to make sure you're laying down with your head facing to the east when you're sleeping. And if there is a geomagnetic storm occurring and you're feeling any of these symptoms, then you can purposefully and consciously change your orientation to the geomagnetic field to hopefully reduce these negative effects and enhance these positive effects. Now, geomagnetic pulsations don't occur just during geomagnetic storms, though that is when they occur most frequently. They can occur at any time, really. Sometimes even just minor solar wind conditions can cause Earth's magnetic field to reverberate. So it's important just in general to set up your sleeping arrangement to the east-west and to make sure your head is pointed to the east when you are sleeping, and to especially make sure you are aligned in the east-west direction in the geomagnetic field during a geomagnetic storm. The other important biophysical connection to geomagnetic pulsations to be aware of is how it interacts with the heart and the autonomic nervous system. What we see is that geomagnetic pulsations change heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is the time difference between heartbeats. So for example, you have a heartbeat and then 1 second later you have another one. Then let's say 1.1 seconds later, you have your next heartbeat, then 0.9 seconds, so on and so forth. The greater that variability between heartbeats in general, the healthier you are and the lower your overall mortality risk. If you have less heart rate variability, it's a sign of a less dynamic autonomic nervous system, and your chance of mortality goes up. And it's a sign that you're not as healthy. You may have cardiovascular problems. What's been shown is that you're more likely to have heart flutters, an AFib, and even things like a heart attack, an infarction during strong geomagnetic storms because of the significant changes in the geomagnetic field that are occurring at that moment in time. And there can be a time lag to that. And so for example, here, let's say that this is our magnetic field and we see this big change that occur in the magnetic field from a geomagnetic storm. Here we have our heart rate variability time series. We see how that then is mirroring that environmental time series, but with a lag of about 10 hours. And in fact, the time lag between changes to Earth's energies, for example, a geomagnetic storm, and perhaps health and wellness symptoms can be up to a few days. And as we saw with this geomagnetic pulsation data at the beginning of 2025, we had a G4 storm on January 1st. Then we had some low-level G1 storming going to about January 3rd. But we're still seeing these geomagnetic pulsations all the way to January 7th. And in fact, they've been getting stronger. So it's important to be aware of the connection between Earth's geophysical energies and our own health and wellness, and also that connection between how that influences our consciousness. Because, for example, if you're in that north-south direction, you head to the north, then you may be experiencing confusion and dizziness and unease and brain fog and you just can't seem to get your focus, your actual brainwave amplitudes have gone down, your CPU, you could say, is just less effective. It's not being given the energy that it needs. Whereas if you're in that more beneficial east-west direction, head to the east, now you actually have kind of a beneficial supercharging of your entire system. Blood flow increases, brainwave amplitude increases. You have what's experienced by many practice meditators as that calm, blissful state of awareness. You're very aware of everything that's occurring. So those are some of the connections that I wanted to explore in today's video. I hope you found that useful. I would definitely recommend, at a minimum, for you to set up your sleeping arrangement so your head is always pointed towards the east. So even during times when it's not active storming geomagnetically, you are still aligned beneficially with Earth's magnetic field rather than in that north-south direction, because Earth's magnetic field flows into the poles of the northern and southern hemisphere, and that is a force vector. So you want to position yourself kind of at a 90-degree angle to that force vector, specifically head to the east. That is what the research shows to be beneficial. And in addition to that, there's also other things that you can do to improve your health and wellness bioelectrically. Something else that's been shown to really improve health and wellness, especially in context of these high energy flux events like a geomagnetic storm, is earthing and grounding, which is connecting to Earth's electric charge. The best way to do this is to go outside, walk around barefoot, specifically like at a park, on the grass. That's a really great way to ground yourself. Also to walk at the beach or go swim in the ocean. That's one of the best ways you can ground yourself. And this connects you to Earth's electric field, and it in general has a neutral or even negative charge as compared to the charge that your body accumulates, which is positive. And what we see when we examine things like inflammation is that's based upon, in large part, free radical activity. And these are all molecules that are seeking an electron to stabilize their molecular structure. So they react to different things, your cell membrane or this protein here, this ion channel there, causing chaos and disruption. Your body has to heal that damage. Well, contained within your extracellular matrix, your fascia, and other connective tissues, you have a bunch of free electrons, because those sort of materials are semiconductor in nature. They have these extra free electrons in their atomic structure. And when you connect to Earth's charge, you bring more free electrons into your body and you replenish those reservoirs within your extracellular matrix. So when there is free radical activity, you now have those electrons readily available for different parts of your body that need it. So if going outside and grounding barefoot is difficult at any moment in time, or you'd like to be grounded more often, I do have earthing shoes available on my website at wildfreeorganic.com/store. These are the women's here. These are the men's. These are all natural, 100% leather. Even the bottom of the shoe is leather, meaning the entire sole of the shoe is conductive. This is really important for grounding, because if it's not conductive, you are not establishing that connection to Earth's electric potential, and therefore you're not decharging any built up charge that you have. So it has to be conductive, and a single copper plug is not enough. All other earthing shoes basically have just this copper plug. This entire sole is conductive because it's leather, and you still have the copper plug at the K1 meridian. It is a wide toe box, zero drop on the heel, so really good for natural foot posture and toe splay. If you wear these for a few months, you'll dramatically strengthen your feet and improve your coordination, your balance. Really good, especially if you're getting older and you don't want to have like a risk of a fall. And then for the women's here, you see it's a different style. They're like a cozy slip-on, and these are amazing. I have them on my website at wildfreeorganic.com. I like to wear these when I'm out doing chores, buying groceries, things of this nature, where it's not really practical to walk around barefoot, but I like to remain grounded more often. And I think they're quite stylish too. So available at wildfreeorganic.com/store. That will help you to bring your biorhythms into harmony with the natural geophysical rhythms of the Earth. And this will help optimize your circadian rhythm. You should be sleeping better if you're grounded more often. You'll have a more normalized cortisol profile because that will help even out the big swings in cortisol, which affects your circadian rhythm. It should help also reduce inflammation. And even for, let's say, like athletes, grounding improves muscle protein synthesis and reduces muscle protein breakdown. So a lot of benefits to earthing and grounding that go beyond just the connection to earth and the replenishment of free electrons in the body. It's really something you have to do for your health and your wellness because we evolved grounded to the earth 24/7. It's only since basically the 1960s when they introduced rubber-soled shoes that we got disconnected from the earth. So you can get reconnected again by going barefoot, or if you want to still be able to go out and about wearing shoes, these are all natural and leather, so you stay connected to the earth. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. I hope you found all this information valuable. If you did, please smash that thumbs up button, help this channel grow. Subscribe to join the Soul Tribe. And there are other things on the website too, like all organic herbal tea blends that I mix myself that I offer. Those also can help with these changes in Earth's energies that we are experiencing at this moment in time. In particular, you can look at tranquility and spirituality. Those are both amazing. Wishing you all well, have a great day, and I'll see you all in a future video.